Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the beginning of the end of the conference. We will probably end 5 or 10 minutes a bit late, because we started a bit late, so I'm just setting your expectations right now. You're going to have to stay a bit later. If you'll notice, I've set up my Nintendo resolution on this presentation, which is an 8-bit resolution. I just find that it is exactly what the projector here required. So, I want to start by giving you a little bit of background about why this talk even exists. I wrote a while ago a book about unit testing, the art of unit testing. It did quite well, and for a while, for maybe the past 10 years, I've been teaching unit testing and test-driven development. And the thing that kept happening is that every time I teach that stuff, it always seems to repeat itself. That is, I see a lot of companies and places that try to adopt it and fail, and so people keep always learning the beginning stuff, and the very little places are moving beyond that, and it's very frustrating for me as a technical person. So I started writing a book about elastic leadership, which is all about how are you able to change the culture inside your organization so that you can change the practices that people around you are able to do? Which leads me to my next point. This talk will probably not make any difference in your life whatsoever. I apologize in advance. It's, you go to a conference and you go and you see nice talks and you say, that was an amazing thing. I mean, really, I want to give this a try. And then you go back to your job. And everything goes back to exactly the way it used to be. And so this is the frustration that I see a lot. We go to these things, we learn new things, we learn new skills, or we want to learn, and then we want to try them out in real life. We want to give it a try, but it's almost impossible to get the people around us to get to try or change their practices, or even to get the organization to give us the ability to try it. And I think this has to do with two main factors. We, as technical people, it's hard for us to understand what influences other people's behavior. So when we try to convince people, we usually look at explaining the logic behind the thing and teaching people the specific skill. And then we assume that once these two things are done, everything will change. If I believe that a specific way of testing is the right way, and I talk to a person in my team and I say, well, it's good because it's much better than the other way because X, Y, Z, which is a logical, it's true. It's a Boolean true. And the person says, yeah, that totally makes sense. And then we teach the person how to do that. So that's the two main things that we say, okay, once these two things are done, there should be no reason whatsoever for that person not to start doing the new thing. And then nothing happens and we're stuck. There's like a wall and we have no idea why the things that we believe are the right things to do are different from what's actually happening in reality around us. And it's even more frustrating because we know a lot of people around us want to do the right thing, they believe in the right thing, and still we are kind of in a death march working on things in a way that we don't want to work on, creating things in a quality we don't want to create. Even though we want to do the best, somehow everything kind of deteriorates in many projects that I've seen. And the second reason that I think this is happening is because no matter what your position is, and by the way, let's just see, raise of hands, who here is leading a team relating to testing? If you're a leader, an appointed leader. Who here is part of a team but is not a leader in a team? Okay? And what else is there? Marketing, I guess, right? That doesn't matter. But what I want to say is that even though you might not be an appointed leader, a lot of times we are afraid to take initiative to try to change things because we don't know what is the right way to try to change some of the things we want to do. And this is kind of where the elastic leadership model that I want to present takes place, because it's all about understanding why are we not able to change things and moving to a place where we can change something. And this is what the model represents. For any team, given any team, any IT project that I've seen, I've always seen that team in one of three states. And the team can move between one of these states on a day-to-day basis. The most common state is survival mode. Okay, and survival mode in an IT project means that you're wasting most of your time fixing fires, you're chasing things that you're already late, you're overcommitted, and so you don't have time to do things the right way. You don't have time to learn. And I think maybe 90% of the teams that I've seen out there in IT projects are in survival mode. Basically, they're just trying to survive. There's just enough air to not lose your job, kind of, in a way. I know it sounds dark, but really, if you'll see it at multiple types of teams, we've seen teams overcommitted, trying to achieve things that are already late, and so they're pushing away things that help the quality or prevent future fires. So survival mode is defined by no time to learn and practice. If you are in that place, it's almost impossible to get out of it without at least understanding where you are and realizing you have to get out of there as soon as possible. Because if you don't have time to learn, you cannot move your team into the state which we call learning mode. And learning mode is that state which, if maybe you've heard a lot of agile coaches talk about. Oh, we want to coach the team, get the team to make their own mistakes. We want to, get the team to learn to be self-organizing, etc. But if you're in survival mode, no one will let you make your own mistakes. There's usually going to be a lot of pressure, and so you're just going to throw away a lot of that stuff. There's no time for learning. So if we want to be able to learn new skills, and we want to have people around us learn new skills, we have to make the time to learn those new skills. We have to get out of the survival mode, which means getting rid of some commitments or changing the estimates, which I find is one of the core problems that leads to survival mode, is that we are afraid of telling the truth of what things will actually take in real time. We're afraid of negotiating what is possible versus what is unrealistic. And I remember this from one of my first jobs as a team lead. And I remember going to my manager. It was the first project I've ever led, and it was supposed to be kind of a few months project. And the manager, the CEO of the company, came to me and said, "Look, Roy, I know this project will probably take about 8 months, but I need you to finish it in 3 months. I'm counting on you. Can you do it, Roy? Can you do it?" And he's looking at me in his bright blue steel eyes. And I was just a young team leader. He was like all, husky and like very managerial. We were wearing a suit. And I was kind of like this. And he was, "Roy, the company depends on you." And what did I say? Okay. And of course, and that's an example of the problem is not with the deadline, it's not with the project management. The problem a lot of times is with us. We are the ones usually giving the estimates, and we are the ones that people are supposed to listen to. And if they don't listen and they don't use our estimates, that's a different problem. But a lot of times, what you'll see is the projects use the real estimates given by IT teams, which are already unrealistic because they're being pressured into some kind of thing. And living up to that pressure, staying real in that kind of stuff, that's kind of what I do. That's what I have a whole course of teaching leaders of how do you withstand that kind of pressure. But that's I'm just trying to understand what the root causes are. If we are in survival mode, we want to move into learning, we have to make more time for learning. And once we have that time for learning, we can actually start learning new skills. And that's cool. And what are the skills we want to learn? We want to learn the skills that will make the team self-organizing. And now we get back to what all the agile coaches and all the agile training always says. We want a self-organizing team. A true self-organizing team, you can lock them in a room for 14 days, come back, and you have a shippable increment. And of course, most teams, if they're in survival mode, you lock them in a room for 14 days, and you come back after the 14 days, there are 10 dead bodies in the room because they don't know even how to feed themselves in that situation. They don't have the right skills to become self-organizing? They don't know. And they're not gonna know because they don't have time to learn all that stuff. So this model is all about how do you become self-organizing, and it is difficult and it can take a while, and it can change from project to project, from team to team, because depending on how well you are able to deal with the current reality, that's how more self-organizing you are. If this is the 100th time you're testing the same stuff or building the same thing, you're gonna be much more relaxed and able to handle different things that happen than if I asked you to, get this laptop, talk to that chair, and give me an estimate right now, right? Can you do it in 3 days? Can you? I trust you, I trust you. Okay? So what do you do in those situations? And immediately the team will move back from self-organizing into either learning or survival mode. And why is this important? First of all, it's important to realize where we are so that we realize that many other people are in the same situation, and the reasons that lead to it, once we understand them, we can also try to solve them. Because the main goals for us as leaders is to create time for learning if we're in survival mode. If we're in learning mode, it is to teach people skills that they need so they don't have to contact any outside teams. And in self-organizing, it's mostly about making sure that everything is facilitated but letting the team kind of manage their own time. And one of the problems that you see today in IT industries is that people treat a team as self-organizing when they're not, or even the opposite, and I've been to that as well. You have a self-organizing team, but you treat them like they're in survival mode. So you have a bunch of people that already work together, they know how to do their job, but you're treating them like children. Okay, what did you do yesterday? What are you gonna do today? Anything stopping you? Okay, next, okay. Well, we already talked about it 30 minutes ago before you even came to job, right? So some teams don't need it. They will actually burn out if you treat them based on the wrong type of phase that the team is in. And this is where the elastic leadership style also changes. This is why it's important. If I'm a leader of that team, then if I'm in survival mode, I have to get out of survival mode. That's my initial tactic. And to do that, it's much more likely that I will have to be more command and control. I will have to set specific limits, let people do their job in a specific way, and then change the estimations and actually get the team out of survival mode. But in learning mode, it would be horrible if I did that. In learning mode, the whole point is to be a coach and only sometimes a dictator. For example, you want the team to make their own mistakes, but they can't have mistakes that are too big. We choose not to work with source control. We're self-organizing. We choose not to do it. No, you can't. You have to choose source control. Give me 3 options of source control you have to work with. That's an example of being a dictator. The team plays in a sandbox, in a way. And the idea behind this is that you want the team to have to make mistakes and learn, but in a way that still fits the timelines that you actually have. So the estimations will include learning inside it. In self-organizing, I'm definitely much more of a facilitator. So that's the basic idea between the elastic leadership models. But what does that have to do with the people in this room? Well, some people are technically leaders, but most people didn't raise their hands. So my question to you is, are you a leader even if you're not appointed as leader? Can you use this model even if you're not appointed? And that's a very interesting question. How do you measure whether you are a leader or not? And to me, the biggest way to answer that is ask yourself if you're a bottleneck. If you are a bottleneck, then you are potentially a leader. And what is a bottleneck? Another way to say it, by the way, is bus factor. Who knows what a bus factor is? Okay, some people here, not enough. A bus factor is how many people have to get hit by a bus for the team to stop working, okay? There's always this one person that knows how the build system works, the one person that knows how to run the test, the one person knows how to do deployment, the one person. If that person tomorrow, well, in Norway, when I lived there, I used to say it was called the ski factor, but it doesn't matter, right? Person is not available for some obscure reason to do with that country. So, if you're a bottleneck, and almost every team has at least 1 or 2, you're potentially a leader, because it means you're in charge of making some types of decisions. For example, in many teams that I've seen, the role of testers, as part of their role, they are the only ones, which I think is crazy, allowed to open a bug. They're the only ones allowed to close a bug. The only ones allowed to do specific things or to even say or verify that something is passing, not passing. And so, by definition, their role is a bottleneck. And you can say that for a lot of different roles. An architect, by definition, is a bottleneck because they make decisions about architecture, etc., etc. So, if you're potentially a leader, you can use your power for good or for evil. But a lot of people, I find, they don't do either that or this. They just exist. They're right in the middle. They are a bottleneck, and they just exist as a bottleneck in the team. Yes, they verify this, and they do this, and they don't have one verification preference over this or the other. They don't use their power for any specific reason. They're just like, tofu. They just are. Exist. So, maybe we can use that hidden power of the masses, of the people in this room, to actually be able to change things. Because if you are a bottleneck, you have a pressure point on the organization. And a pressure point means that you can use it for good, and you can use it to get other people to learn new skills so that you can increase the ability of the organization to do its work. Which is the next question. What is my role as a leader? My role as a leader, and that's the way I define it, to make myself unneeded as a leader. I know it sounds weird, but let's think about it for a second. If I know that people need me to make a specific thing, and I can measure how much people require me to make that specific thing, and I can teach people how to make that decision and think like I think, maybe they won't need me to make that decision, which means that they're able to have one extra skill. So they're more self-organizing than they were before. Because what is self-organization really? Is that you don't require other people to do your job. So what is a team of a self-organizing team? It's a team that doesn't require anyone else to do their job. And for example, a Scrum Master is a perfect example of a bottleneck. If the team requires a Scrum Master, it's not really a self-organizing team, because the team should be able to, anyone in the team should be able to be a Scrum Master at a specific point and even change, and switch roles every week or something, because it's an important skill. You don't want the Scrum Master to be away for a week and the team cannot run an iteration. It doesn't make any sense. No, the Scrum Master is not here, we're not able to work. I mean, we're able to work better. That's what a lot of people would say. I'm sorry to say that. And I think, to me, when I became a leader, that's one of the things that always was missing for me. How do I measure my own success? How do I measure that I'm doing a good job? And to me, other than the day-to-day stuff, I always have this kind of moral compass of where I want the team to be. And slowly but surely, could take years, I slowly teach people around me extra skills. I grow the team around me to not require my specific skills. Which means, technically, that if I'm away speaking at a conference, the team should be able to do their job as if I'm there. It doesn't matter. Which begs the question, if they don't need me, if they really don't need me, what am I supposed to do? Will I still have a job if they don't need me? And here's my answer to that. If you're the type of person that is able to grow the team so they don't need you, you will always have a job. You'll be one of the most precious people in your organization, because you won't just be someone who's good at something. You will be that person that you can put in different teams, and the team around that person grows and becomes better. You will become a meta coach, if you will. Someone that's much more important to the organization than someone that only affects a specific team. Because if you teach people, then you're affecting, your circle of effect, in a way, is much, much bigger. Which means that you have more free time to do the things that you think should be done. For example, learning new skills, trying them out, creating proof of concepts, and then trying to apply them in a specific scenario. you remove the risk of a bust factor from the company. So that means that from a project perspective, people will always want to remove a bust factor. And I can tell you that from many types of companies that I consult with, the most dangerous people in the organization are the ones that do not share information, the ones that everyone depends on and afraid of. Because that stuff only works for a specific amount of time. There's always this one person that knows this kind of secret, let's say COBOL, doesn't matter, right? Imagine the huge risk of that person. I'm not talking about cost, I'm talking about the risk of that person going away. For the company, the first instinct will be is to reduce that risk as much as possible. So it only takes one extra person that knows the same or close to, but is willing to share information to be able to replace. So, and that's what I usually tell people, is that for any amazing person you have in your team that only likes to work alone and not share information and not grow the people around them, I can find an equally good person that is willing to communicate and is willing to share information, and that person will be worth much more to the organization. So that's also something to consider. So if I'm good at sharing information and teaching other people, and I'm also good at testing, that means that I'm much more valuable to the organization because I can go around and teach other people in the organization as well, but I also have time to enrich my own personal skills, which in turn enriches the skill of everyone else, because what I learn, I also teach other people, which means the team keeps growing. And you might listen to this and say, yeah, of course, Roy. I mean, I totally understand everything you're saying. Totally makes sense. However, specifically in my team, I know a couple of people, you're not going to be able to teach them anything. There's one person does this and one person not able to. 99% of the time, that's absolutely not true. And usually it's a story we tell ourselves so that we don't have to do the most difficult task that a leader usually does. Because if we understand that great teams are grown, they're not hired. You cannot hire the perfect team. You have an existing team and then you grow them into the team that you wish you had. And that is, to me, the essence of leadership. And you don't have to be an appointed leader to be able to create that. All you have to do is to be able to challenge other people and to teach the people who are willing to learn around you. And if you have authority, that's even better, but you don't need authority to be able to teach people. All you need is to be able to communicate and talk to people in a communicative way. And our hope is to create a team of leaders. All right, if you took a team of team leaders, that would be the perfect self-organizing team, because each one of them knows what to do in a specific situation. But if I took a team of people that have never been team leaders, each one of them has a specific experience, and most of the time in situations involving the company and maybe bigger things, they have no idea what to do. So it's all about teaching people how you think when you deal with a specific situation. And in our case, in the case of this specific conference, my goal as a tester is to create a team of testers, a team of people who think like testers. That is my ultimate goal. Yes, if I have my day-to-day tasks, etc., but I can measure my success, but how much do people know and think about testing the way I think about testing? Because usually, people who work in this area, they have a specific set of skills. And a lot of developers sometimes are missing those skills. For example, developers are really good at writing code, but are really bad at assuming that their code doesn't work, which is the opposite of this room usually. And this skill, this method of thinking, of looking at something and trying to find out all the ways that it's not working, and usually if you look at what developers do, they try to verify that things are working, which is the opposite of what usually you want them to do. How do you get that type of thinking? Because if you don't teach them that skill, you will always have to, I'll call it, clean up after. No, that's not the way, or we're missing all this stuff. But what if I could teach developers how to come up with good scenarios for testing during the planning phase? Instead of me being required to do all of these things alone, I can teach them how to come up with good scenarios. If I could teach them how to think like I think, then they could come up with good scenarios as well, and that could not only save time, but also increase the knowledge about the scenarios and maybe share more work, and the ability to communicate better and create a real shared team would be much better. The same way that a lot of developers would like to be able to teach testers that don't know how to code to be able to code. And I've been to a couple of companies where testers have gone to coding courses so they can start writing code. And in that specific case, a lot of times what I've seen is there's much better collaboration between the teams because they speak in many of the same terms after that. Yes, they're not going to work on the same, they're going to work on simpler tasks, etc. But eventually you have better communication because you are changing the mode of thinking for that person. So the next question is, how do you grow the people? How do you teach people those new skills? And of course, one of the biggest problems with teaching people is that you actually have to do something that you might not have done before. And there's a great quote by Jerry Weinberg, who recently passed away, but he wrote a book called Managing Teams Congruently, and I had to look up what the word congruently actually means, which means in flow, together, everything works about the same. Managing teams congruently, and what he says there in a paraphrase is, leadership done right is a tough job. Right? If you're doing it correctly, it's tough. That's why a lot of leaders get paid more. But a lot of leaders like to take the money but not do all the hard parts. So what is the hard part I keep repeating? It is talking to people. It's literally having a one-on-one conversation with the person, pair programming with people, sitting with people and talking to them is one of the hardest things that people in the IT industry seem to be facing as far as I can see. It's so easy to not talk to people because we tell ourselves stories about what would happen when we do talk to them. Oh, I know exactly what he'll say when I talk, blah, blah, blah. I know exactly how that conversation is going to go. And actually you don't. Our brain is kind of giving us all these stories to avoid all that unpleasantness. But here's the thing. If we want to actually grow people, we have to get out of our comfort zone and try those new things. And one of the things that he talks about in the book is how do people learn new skills? And he measured his progress in a game, Flipper, what do you call that game? Where you have like the ball and the two things on the sides. Flipper? Pinball. Not Pong, come on. I mean, he's old, but not that old. Well, he did, well. So here's the thing. So he was tracking his progress, and he saw that over time he got better and better points in pinball. But as he rendered the results in a higher resolution, he saw that there are periods of slow growth and periods of fast growth. Periods where he got slowly better, periods where he got much better, much faster. And he realized those places happened when he learned something new about how to play the game, a new paradigm, if you will. For example, if you have more than one ball in the game, at the same time, you get double points. Okay, so he got much better when he learned that. But if you take a closer look at the renderings, you see that before he got better, he got worse. Before he got better, he got worse because he had to learn how to play the game again with a different set of thinking tools. So he had to unlearn his previous way and learn a new way. And it's the same thing for learning every new skill. When you learn a new programming language, this is really what it feels like. Right? When I learned, I started in Visual Basic, okay? And I learned Visual Basic, and just writing hello world was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, I feel so stupid. When I learned the second programming language, I think it was C#, I immediately felt much, much stupider because again, I couldn't even write a simple hello world, which I could do in Visual Basic. And it's the same thing for everything. And when I looked, this is from his book, and when I looked at this, it reminded me of exactly one thing. My 3 kids. I looked at this and said, you know what? He's absolutely right, because here's right there, that's me and my wife with no kids. Living life, everything is amazing, and then always complaining we never have enough time. And then having our first baby, and immediately life became worse. with a new child, well, for the first few months, life became very difficult. We had to learn how to deal with this extra person in the house, how to eat, how to sleep, we were so tired, we couldn't even cook our own food. People had to bring food to our house. We were like, refugees in our own houses. It was crazy. But after a few months, things became better. We kind of learned how to live with this one extra nice person in the house, and how to set up the sleeping schedule and how to, do everything. And we became better. I mean, if we looked back at the time we didn't have kids, I couldn't believe we were complaining we don't have enough time. Right? Now we do the same thing, but with an extra baby. But then a couple of years later, the second child arrived. And immediately life became worse again, because 2 children is completely different than a single child, because now they can gang up on you. They teach each other tricks. They wake each other up at night. You have to do close guard, like in basketball, 1 person on 1. You can't just, you're 2 adults, 2 kids. Life is very difficult. Okay. So we had to learn how to adapt to that. And after a couple of maybe 3-4 months, life became easier again. And I looked back at the time I only had 1 child, and it was so easy. I mean, if my wife leaves me with a single child today, it's like, what? That's like nothing. And then a couple of years later, we had our 3rd child, and immediately life became different. I wouldn't say worse, but very, very different. Because the 3rd child, you can get the first child to get to take care of the first child. In essence, we had created our own self-organizing team. Thank you. That's what I did when I saw them. Very good. Oh, he's wounded. Yes, just the Band-Aid is over there. Oh, he's hungry. Oh, don't worry, it's on the floor. 5-second rule, no problem. And here's the thing. I'm a much better leader with 3 kids than I was before I had kids. Because very little stresses me out in real life that I haven't already faced much worse at home, right? Much, much worse. Take any situation at work, like the most stressful, and now put that situation at 2 a.m. That's, right? Already worse, so that's basically 3 kids. So, and 3 boys, by the way, which is a completely different. So my wife's brother has 6 kids. That person lives in a completely different galaxy than I do. I have no idea what he goes through, what his brain is like. His neurons are probably wired completely differently. He probably has 6 arms by now. I have no idea. No idea. And that's the thing. That every time that there is a ravine, we learn something new, we come out, we are different people. And when we look back, we look at our previous actions and we say we would have done things differently. And that is an example of growth. And if this applies to every new skill that we learn, we can start thinking, you know what, instead of this happening to me, I can start planning it. Because if I know that every time I learn a new skill, it begins with this time where things are uncertain and unverifiable and not comfortable and maybe annoying, etc., but I know I'm going to come out on the other side better, then I can plan this for myself. And I can even plan it for people around me in my team. And if I'm a team leader, I can also do that with people that I want them to learn new skills. So the idea is to get people out of their comfort zone with the knowledge that they're gonna feel uncomfortable, they're gonna feel frustrated, but it's a temporary thing. And when they come out the other side, they're gonna be better. And if you look at every time that organizations try to change the way testers and developers work, you will see that a lot of it is because of that comfort zone. We're used to doing things in a specific way. It would be very uncomfortable to do things in this way because I've never done it this way, and so I'm learning a completely different skill. And passing those few months of uncomfortableness is the key problem that we have to face. So we have to know that stuff is coming. By the way, this is what it looks like in real life. This is what it looks like. There are always small ups and downs. There are small ups and downs, but those things are very different than the big ups and downs. Okay? So learning a new framework is not getting out of my comfort zone. It really has to feel a bit scary or a bit uncomfortable, where I say, is this really what I want to do? Is this really what I want to change? Because that is the way we learn things that we didn't even know that we don't know. So if we want to grow the team around us, we have to realize that we want to ask them things that they might not be comfortable hearing, and we should be comfortable with that. We should be comfortable feeling uncomfortable, and we should be comfortable with our team feeling uncomfortable. So as a rule, if I'm a team lead and my team, everyone is happy and everything is amazing, everything just flows, something is wrong. Okay, I want people to feel just a little bit uncomfortable. I want them to feel a bit frustrated. I want them to learn new skills. And so when they are a bit unhappy about doing things that they maybe never meant to do, I'm okay with that. I can live with that because I know what happens on the other side of that, because I've lived through it. Growing the team is a scary thing, and you can treat it as your own little ravine. That one thing that you want to try that you're afraid of trying. Asking someone, instead of you solving the problem for them, asking, hey, let's solve the problem together. I'll teach you how to do it. That might feel a bit scary, might feel uncomfortable, but I encourage you to give it a try. Maybe one person will say no and another, but one person will say yes. And that one person will maybe learn a new skill. And then you can teach more and more people this way. So even if you don't have the authority, but people ask you to do something, you can always say, let's do it together. Let me teach you how to do it, so you can do it yourself. You won't have to even contact me next time. Or let's find a way to make this faster and easier. Instead of, don't worry, I will do it, I'll put on the cape, I'll be the hero. No, we don't want to be the hero. We want to be the person who makes the other people the hero, in this case. There is a manifesto that I put on a site called 5wise.com. And this is the manifesto, and I think this applies to almost everyone in the IT. As potential leaders, we believe that great teams are grown, not hired. And our goal is to continuously grow the skills of the people around us. We believe that happier teams make happier customers and employers. So we continuously challenge ourselves and other people around us instead of keeping everyone in their comfort zone, instead of being tofu. Okay? We adapt our leadership style if we see that, for example, if our team is in survival mode, and it doesn't matter if I'm a leader or not, it's going to be impossible for me to challenge someone else and say, let's do it together because we're in survival mode. It's going to be impossible. But understanding survival mode and talking about it and changing estimation so we can have time to teach other people, that's the skill we want to have as well. We want to adapt our leadership style so that if we're in survival, we don't challenge people, but after that we do. And we increased our participation in human interaction instead of just machines. Basically, if we feel comfortable just talking to a machine all day, we have to learn to become comfortable talking to people. And if it's uncomfortable, you should do it more, remember. Because the whole point is to go down that ravine and come out on the other side with a new set of skills. And that is, by definition, the ability to make a difference for us is to understand that there is power even if you feel that you don't have one. And the power is every time that you're faced with yourself being a bottleneck, that is the time you can find that pressure point and make a real difference in your actual lives. Okay. And with that, I want to say thank you. Good luck. Let's be careful out there. You can contact me on all of these platforms.